we can say goodbye to 2019 in all of its glory and splendor. And with the year now in the past, we are able to reflect and review and analyze, and particularly, in this case, on the performances we've seen at the box office. Because if there's one thing Hollywood loves to do, it's to make cold, hard cash. Destroy the competition, eat the souls of the plebeians. This year was particularly eventful and exciting for a number of reasons. Number one, worldwide, $42.5 billion was brought in at the box office, which is an all-time world record. What's really interesting is that this was in a year where domestic box office dipped by 4% as compared to last year. Side note, when I say domestic, I mean revenue from within the borders of the USA. If I say international, I mean revenue from outside the borders of the US, and worldwide means combining the totals from domestic and international together. This was also the second year in a row that all major studios saw profit in their motion picture divisions. So the industry from the top is doing pretty well overall, even in face of competition from streaming services. But this is all just surface level stuff. How about we dig a little deeper? Let's talk about the major studios in America, what movies they released, and what the box office saw as we compare and contrast these studios and their performances, one studio at a time. And really, for 2019, there's only one place to start. Disney. Let's just wave the white flag now and surrender everything we have to the mouse because they were just unstoppable this year.
Everybody understands when you wave the white flag, you want to be friends? Hey there! Open up! Come on out! We're friends! That's right! We welcome you! We're friends! Yeah!
Now, since the Fox deal with Disney went through in March of 2019, I'm still gonna treat them as two separate entities. Next year, though, they will be definitely one. But even just talking about Disney alone, they had a 42% market share of worldwide gross, which, holy sh**, Disney had 8 films make over $1 billion in 2019. What the actual f***? The last time one studio had this many billion-dollar movies was Disney, again in 2016 with 5 movies. So let's just go through the whole year beginning to end. Avengers Endgame, which cost an estimated $400 million to make, made $2.7 billion at the box office, which broke the all-time world record for highest grossing film, not accounting for inflation. What we can do with these numbers is divide our box office returns by our budget and get our ratio for a return on investment. So 2.7 billion divided by 400 million, rounded up, is 7. So the film made 7 times its initial budget. Now, these things can get really complicated really fast if you actually want to get to the truth of the numbers. Many databases have different reports for budgets and box office grosses. Studios often use accounting wizards to fudge the numbers and make films appear to be more profitable or less profitable than it was. See Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. And box office grosses don't take into account the fact that movie theaters keep a percentage of the ticket sales, a percentage which changes week by week. And the film's budget doesn't include advertising and promotions costs, which can often sometimes exceed the production costs of an actual budgeted film. And it's often believed that studios make a higher percentage per ticket in a domestic market than overseas. And also, we're not keeping in mind home video and streaming rights and licensing. Shut the f up! Okay, there's no easy way to do this. And no matter what I do, I'm always going to be at least a little bit wrong. But there is a somewhat general rule that will help you in this day and age. If a film, especially a major studio blockbuster, made more than 2.5 times its production budget at the box office, then it's somewhat safe to say that the film was a success. And if it was less than that, things get tricky. But the higher that return on investment gets, the more confident we can be that the film was good for the studio and no one got fired.
Would you rather get a bullet to the head or 5 to the chest and bleed to death?
Are those my only 2 options?
So, let's get back to Disney. They released Avengers Endgame in April, and Lion King earlier in March, scoring 6.4 on its investment. As of now, Rise of Skywalker just passed $1 billion worldwide, so its score sits at a 3.7. The film is still making money, but definitely nowhere near the box office powerhouse of The Force Awakens or even The Last Jedi. Frozen 2 is at a 9.1. It's still in theaters, so it's still got money to make. Toy Story 4 scored a 5.4, Captain Marvel hit 6.5, Far From Home was a 7.1, Will Smith's Genie saw 5.8 with Aladdin, Maleficent saw 2.7 return, with the worldwide gross being a full $268 million less than the previous Maleficent title. And of course, as a finale, the wonderful Dumbo, making $353 million on a reported budget of $170 million, creating a score of 2.1. So what's the lesson to learn from this? Even when Disney loses, they don't really care. Again, they made $11 billion at the box office worldwide. They held 42% of the market share. Bow to your god, Babylon! Disney's insane year is kind of not expected to repeat in 2020, but still could come out on top again as number one. Pixar's Soul and Onward, Marvel's Black Widow and Eternals, the animated Raya and the Last Dragon, as well as Artemis Fowl, Mulan, and Jungle Cruise. Time will only tell how successful these 8 films will do compared to the 8 films they released in 2019 that each made $1 billion. Warner Brothers, the second highest performer of 2019, with 16% of the market share. Jesus Christ, that's second place. Well, obviously the big talk for Warner Brothers is Joker, which made an astounding $1.066 billion at the box office. The fact that a movie featuring the most recognizable comic book villain of all time made this much money isn't the most shocking idea. It's the fact that the film was rated R and cost about $55 million to make, and had a return on its investment of 19.4, making this one of the most profitable films ever made. This isn't the first time Todd Phillips sacrificed a budget for creative freedom and ended up paying off, since we saw a very similar thing with 2019's The Hangover, making a 13.3 times return and giving Phillips a big piece of those profits. Say what you will about him as a filmmaker, but he's a very smart businessman and takes risks that pay off for him and his team. What else did Warner Brothers have? Well, It Chapter 2 scored a 6.7 on its investment. The budget was double from its predecessor while not doing nearly as well at the box office. Detective Pikachu made $429 million and scored a barely passable 2.9. Shazam did 4.4. Godzilla scored a 2.3, going from a strong $530 million for the 2014 Godzilla to a pretty somewhat $383 million for the sequel. The Lego Movie 2 showed that the Lego film brand has been diminished far too much than the original 2014's film, with $457 million for the original, and each subsequent Lego film being released seeing less and less returns. Annabelle scored somewhere around an 8, and La Lorna made $121 million from a $9 million budget, and showed again that horror can be extremely profitable. And the losers? Dr. Sleep did pretty poorly, and probably should have been called Shining 2 More Shiny, if it really wanted to actually make its money back. And unlike Eastwood's sizable hit Mule last year, Richard Jewell is poised to be a pretty big disappointment. Blinded by the Light definitely lost money, Shaft was an absolute bomb, as was The Kitchen and Motherless Brooklyn. And The Goldfinch was a bomb of epic proportions. That movie was really only in theaters for 2 weeks before theaters across the country just gave up on it. An ending score of just 0.2! Oh my god, that's so sad. But it doesn't really matter that much because the Joker money is making up for all of these relatively minor losses. Warner Brothers totaled a worldwide gross of $4.4 billion. Decent work, mixed in with some small misses, and only one big hit that was just an absolute smash and a win for the studio. Universal. Well, let's talk about Universal. Their big wins were Us, scoring a 12.8. It was very similar in the box office when compared to Peele's previous film, Get Out, but had just a little bit bigger and a larger budget. Hobbs and Shaw wasn't as successful as the main Fast and Furious franchise, but certainly made back its budget and then some with a 3.8 score from a $200 million budget. How to Train Your Dragon scored a 3, Secret Life of Pets a 5.4. Glass was a return to form from Shyamalan again, showing that he works best when he's given very little. On a budget of just $20 million, he was able to pull in $245 million, scoring 12.3. Good Boys hit 5.5, which is honestly just a shame when compared to the absolutely fabulous Booksmart from Annapurna, which made a fifth of what Good Boys made and cost less than half in budget. My Mortal Enemy Yesterday scored around a 6. Abominable was a 2.5. Ma was a big hit with a $61 million return on $5 million budget, ending with a 12.2 score. Now listen, I really thought Last Christmas was gonna end up being a much bigger hit than it was. I just feel like we haven't had a real Christmas movie that permeated through the cultural zeitgeist for a while, and I thought Emilia Clarke and Emma Thompson were the ones to do it. Alas, the film ended up making only $121 million and scoring a 4, so a perfectly fine hit that we'll just forget about in less than a year. Black Christmas scored a 3.7, and Happy Death Day 2 You scored a 7.2 on a $9 million budget. And there's just one more thing to talk about for Universal. Not 1917 or Queen and Slim, which honestly were released so late in December, I count them as 2020 releases. No, I want to talk about Universal's biggest blunder of the year since, I don't know, 2019's R.I.P.D.? Yeah, I'm talking about Cats, motherfucker. What the f*** were you thinking, Universal? You know what the worst part is? Cats is just the beginning, because in January 2019, Doolittle will need to make up its $175 million budget, and I think that's before the reshoots sent that above the ceiling. Honestly, sometimes I feel that Universal is just Lenny in Of Mice and Men, and George is just the American box office. And I just imagine that Universal just like, oh, look at all these wonderful things. We're gonna have Cats make $1 billion, and they'll be a— Yeah, Universal. You got your whole life ahead of you. It's gonna be wonderful. It's gonna be amazing. They're all gonna love it, and they'll love you. Alright, well, I still gotta do Sony, and Fox, and Paramount, and Lionsgate. I want to talk about the smaller studios too, like A24, and Annapurna, and Neon, and STX, and oh god. Looks like this one's gonna have to be a two-parter, guys. I mean, I don't know. I'll see you again in April, probably, and I'll try and finish this all up. By that time, honestly, Disney will have acquired Universal after all these fuck-ups. Enjoy! Honestly, sometimes I feel like Universal is just George and Of Mice and Men, and Lenny is like the combination of Cats and Doolittle, and Universal really just needs to take Lenny out, you know, Blake. Just shoot him in the fucking face, because you can't. They're like, oh look, Doolittle.